December of '87, the snow came early and stayed mean. By the time Silas Cordell stopped counting days, he'd been alone 3 weeks, just him, 3 half-starved cattle, and a cabin that groaned like a dying man every time the wind blew. The cold had teeth that winter, 20 below most mornings. Frost climbed his walls at night. He spoke only to the cows now. Molly, stubborn, ghost. Figured the silence would take him before spring. Then he heard hoofbeats. Through a blizzard that had already killed 2 trappers, someone rode straight for his fence line. Silas grabbed his rifle. Only a fool or a ghost traveled in this. The rider dismounted. Steam rose from the horse's flanks. She stumbled, caught herself, looked up, and Silas saw her eyes. Dark as the night he'd first seen them, 20 years ago in a burning village, wide with terror. But now they burned with something else entirely. "Cowboy," she said, voice steady as stone, "I came to marry you." A wooden bird, small, worn smooth, fell from her frozen fingers into the snow. Silas didn't move, couldn't. The rifle hung loose in his hand while his brain tried to catch up with his eyes. The woman swayed. Her braids were frozen stiff, threaded with red wool and ice. Buckskin dress layered with buffalo hide, both crusted white. Her lips had gone blue. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, and lunged forward. She collapsed into his arms before he reached her, dead weight. He kicked the door shut behind them, the wind screaming like it wanted her back. Inside, the fire crackled. He laid her near the hearth, started peeling away frozen layers. Her hands were wrapped in bloodied cloth, frostbite bad, her feet worse. The smell hit him, leather, smoke, something herbal he didn't recognize. Apache medicine, maybe. He grabbed a blanket, tucked it around her shoulders. Her breathing came shallow and quick. "Stay with me," he said, though he didn't know why, didn't know who she was. Didn't know why she'd said, "Marry you." His hands shook as he built up the fire. The wind rattled the shutters. 3 weeks since he'd heard another human voice, and now this. A woman, half dead from cold, saying things that made no sense. She stirred, her eyes opened, dark, fever bright. "Kind eyes," she whispered. Silas froze. That name. He hadn't heard it in 20 years. "What did you say?" Her hand found his wrist, grip weak but deliberate. "You gave me that name when I was small." The room tilted. He looked at her face, really looked. The sharp cheekbones, the scar above her left eyebrow, shaped like a crescent moon. And those eyes, God, those eyes that had stared up at him from beneath a burning wagon while bullets cracked overhead and men screamed. The Apache girl. "No," he breathed. You can't be." "I am." Her voice stronger now, cutting through his disbelief. "I am the girl you saved." Silas sat back hard, his spine hitting the cabin wall. The fire popped. Outside, the wind howled. 20 years ago, Canyon Dell, the order had been simple. Burn the village, leave no one. He'd followed orders until he'd heard crying, a child's voice, raw and terrified, coming from under a supply wagon while flames ate the sky. He'd pulled her out, carried her 3 miles through gunfire, left her where her people would find her, then rode away and spent 2 decades trying to forget the smell of burning homes and the weight of a sobbing child against his chest. "You remember," she said. Not a question. He nodded, throat tight. She pushed herself up on one elbow, wincing. The blanket slipped. Underneath, her dress was torn, travel-stained. She'd ridden hard. "I crossed the Bitterroots," she said. "Alone, in December, to find you." "Why?" The word came out hoarse. She met his eyes. "Because when I was 12 years old, hiding in darkness while the world burned, a white soldier with kind eyes saved my life. I made a vow that day. If I lived, I would find him. I would return what he gave me." Silas shook his head. I did not cross winter to hear what you want, cowboy." Steel in her voice now. "I came to keep my word." The fire crackled between them. He smelled wood smoke, damp wool, the metallic tang of blood from her wrapped feet. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Elara. My people call me Firehawk." Firehawk. He tasted the word. It fit her. This woman who'd ridden through a blizzard that would have killed most men. "I'm Silas Cordell. I know. I have known for 15 years. That sent a chill through him, colder than the wind. "How?" "My people remember. We remember Canyon Dell. We remember the faces of those who came with torches." Her gaze didn't waver. "And we remember the one who carried a child to safety when he could have left her to burn." Silas's chest tightened. He looked at the wooden bird lying near her hand, the one she'd dropped. He'd carved dozens like it, back when his hands were steadier. Gave them to children in the territories, a stupid gesture, trying to make something instead of destroying it. I kept it, Alara said softly, following his gaze. 20 years. It reminded me that not all soldiers have cruel hands. The wind screamed, the cabin groaned, and Silas realized the impossible truth staring at him from across his own fire. The past didn't stay buried. Sometimes it rode through a blizzard and knocked on your door. Why marriage? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Alara's expression shifted, something fierce and fragile at once. Because in my people's way, when someone carries you through fire, they become bound to you, and I have been bound to you, Silas Cordell, since I was 7 years old. She reached for the wooden bird, closed her fingers around it. I crossed the bitter roots to keep my vow, but there is something you need to know. Her voice dropped. My uncle gave me 2 moons. If I do not return by the thaw, the fire popped loud. Outside, something crashed, a branch breaking under snow. Red Cloud will come looking for me. 3 days later, Silas heard snowshoes crunching outside. He grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. Through the frost-glazed glass, he saw a hunched figure trudging up the slope. Murphy Sullivan, pack on his back, moving slow. Silas opened the door. Wind bit his face. Murphy, you're a damn fool for traveling in this. Takes one to know one. Murphy stomped inside, shaking off snow. His beard was white with ice. Heard you got company. Silas didn't ask how he knew. Murphy knew everything, ran the only supply depot within 50 miles, heard every whisper that passed through. The Irishman's eyes found Alara by the fire. She was mending her moccasins, needle moving steady. She'd recovered fast, too fast for someone who'd nearly frozen to death. Apache resilience, Silas figured. Ma'am, Murphy said, nodding. Alara nodded back but said nothing. Murphy dropped his pack with a thud, pulled out coffee, dried meat, cornmeal, then a folded paper, edges yellowed. Brought you something else? He laid it on the table. Silas unfolded it. His stomach dropped. Wanted, Silas Cordell. Charges, treason, harboring enemy combatants, aiding Apache fugitives. Reward, $500 Federal Marshal Clayton Beckett, by order of the U.S. government. The paper crinkled in his grip. The smell of old ink filled his nose. When? He asked. Warrant came through last week. Marshals holed up in town, waiting for the thaw. Murphy's voice was low. Roads impassable now, but come April. Silas set the paper down. His hand was steady, but his jaw was tight. They're calling it treason, Murphy continued. Say you've been running messages to the tribes, giving them intelligence. They got 3 witnesses swear they seen you meeting with Apache scouts. That's horseshit. It don't matter if it is true. Matters what they can prove in a courtroom. Murphy glanced at Alara. And having her here ain't gonna help your case none. Alara's needle stopped moving. Silas felt her eyes on him. She's not going anywhere. Silas? I said she's not going anywhere. Murphy sighed, rubbed his frost-scarred hand. He'd lost 3 fingers to cold 2 winters back. You're a stubborn son of a bitch. Always have been. Learned from the best. Murphy almost smiled. Then his expression went grim. There's more. Murphy pulled out another paper, this one newer, less worn. This came yesterday. Ryder made it through before the last storm hit. Silas took it, read. His blood went cold. Addendum to warrant. Subject believed to be harboring Alara Neshoba, niece of Red Cloud, wanted for questioning in territorial disputes. Approach with extreme caution. Subject is considered armed and dangerous. The words blurred. He read them again. Niece of Red Cloud. He looked at Alara. She met his gaze, unflinching. You're Red Cloud's niece, he said flatly. I am. You didn't think to mention that. Would it have changed anything? Her voice was calm. Would you have turned me away? He wanted to say no, wanted to believe he'd have done the right thing regardless. But the truth was, he didn't know. Red Cloud was a name that carried weight, fear, respect, and a whole lot of blood. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Murphy cleared his throat. That ain't all. Town's talking. Word got out you got a woman here. Apache woman. They're saying you've gone native, turned traitor for real this time. Silas's hands curled into fists. Let them talk. Talking turns to action come spring, Silas. You know that. Marshall's got the law on his side. And the town... Murphy paused. They're scared. Scared of Red Cloud. Scared of more raids. They find out you're harboring his niece, they won't wait for a trial. They'll ride out here with torches and a rope. The fire crackled. The smell of coffee mixed with the acrid scent of fear sweat. Alara stood slowly. This is my fault. I should not have... Sit down, Silas said. Silas. I said sit down. She hesitated, then obeyed. Silas turned to Murphy. How long do I have? 6 weeks, maybe 8 if the snow keeps up. Once the thaw hits, Clayton will ride out with a posse. Federal warrant means he's got jurisdiction. Local boys will back him up. You're looking at 8, maybe 10 guns. Against 2. Against 1, Murphy corrected. She ain't gonna fight her own people, and you know it. Alara's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Silas stared at the warrant. His own face stared back. A sketch, crude but recognizable. Beneath it the words, hang on sight if resisting arrest. There's no way out of this, Murphy said quietly. Legal way, anyhow. Your best bet is to send her back now. Tell Clayton it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he'll drop the harboring charge. No. Silas. I said no. He met Murphy's eyes. I didn't save her life 20 years ago just to throw her to the wolves now. Murphy shook his head. You're a goddamn fool. Maybe. The Irishman started repacking his gear. I'll do what I can, slow things down. But come April, they're coming, and when they do... He looked at Alara, then back at Silas. You better hope Red Cloud gets here first, because if the marshal arrives before the tribe does, you're a dead man. He shouldered his pack, opened the door. Wind roared in. 6 weeks, Silas, let's make 'em count. The door slammed shut. Silence settled like fresh snow. Alara spoke first. They are calling me Red Cloud's niece, but they do not know the whole truth. Silas turned. What truth? Her dark eyes held his. My uncle did not send me here to hide. He sent me here to see if you were worthy. The room seemed to tilt. Worthy of what? Of what I came to offer, of what my people might accept. She stood, walked to him. Close enough, he could smell sage and smoke on her skin. You saved my life, Silas Cordell, but mercy is not enough. My uncle wants proof. He wants to see if the man with kind eyes still exists, or if 20 years have turned him into just another white soldier who burns villages and forgets faces. Silas's throat went dry. And if I fail his test? Alara's expression didn't change. Then he will come, with warriors, and they will not come to thank you. After Murphy left, Silas stood at the window, staring at nothing. The wind had died down. Snow fell silent and steady. You should go, he said without turning. No. Alara! I said no. Her voice was firm. Do you think I crossed the Bitterroots in December to be sent away by words? He turned. She was standing now, arms crossed, chin lifted, defiant. You heard Murphy. Come spring, they'll hang me, and if Red Cloud shows up first, then you will face him. She walked to the table, unwrapped the cloth from her feet. The skin beneath was raw, blistered, frostbite scars layered over old calluses. Look, he looked, his stomach turned. This is what it cost to reach you, she said. 3 weeks, alone. Through passes no sane person crosses in winter. My horse nearly died. I walked the last 2 days because he could not carry me. She rewrapped her feet, her movements careful. I did not do this to run when things became difficult. This isn't difficult. This is suicide. Perhaps, she met his eyes, but it is my choice, not yours, not my uncle's, mine. The fire popped. The smell of wood smoke mixed with the copper tang of blood from her wounds. Silas felt something crack inside him, some wall he'd built 20 years ago to keep the world out. Why? He asked, voice rough. Why does it have to be me? You're young. You could find someone from your own people, someone who didn't... He stopped. Someone who didn't burn my village? Alara finished. She stepped closer. You did not light those fires, Silas. You followed orders, then you broke them to save a child. That is the difference. I should have done more. You did what you could, in that moment, with what you had. Her hand reached out, touched his scarred knuckles. That is all anyone can do. Her skin was warm despite everything. He felt the ridge of old burns on her palm, marks from a childhood spent too close to flames. I don't deserve this, he said quietly. That is not for you to decide. Her fingers tightened around his. I walked through ice to reach you. That is my answer. Now you must decide if you are brave enough to let me stay. Outside, an owl called. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. 2 days later, Murphy came back. This time he wasn't alone. Silas saw them through the window, Murphy on snowshoes, and behind him a younger man leading 2 horses. The animals looked half dead, ribs showing through their winter coats. Murphy knocked. Silas opened the door a crack. "Got something for you," Murphy said, his breath clouded in the cold. "Can we come in?" Silas stepped aside. The younger man was Davy Tucker, Murphy's nephew, quiet kid, maybe 20. He nodded at Silas, glanced nervously at Alara, then looked at his boots. Murphy set down a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, unwrapped it. Inside, rope, thick and new, coiled tight. "What's this for?" Silas asked. "Whatever you need." Murphy's voice was low. "Also brought feed for your cattle and some extra ammunition." "I can't pay." "Didn't ask you to." Murphy looked at him hard. "You saved my brother's life in the war, Silas? You think I forgot that?" Silas had forgotten. It'd been 30 years ago, a skirmish that barely made the reports. He'd pulled Sean Sullivan out of a river, half drowned and bleeding. Sean died a year later from fever, but that was beside the point. "That was a long time ago," Silas said. "Debt don't have an expiration date." Murphy glanced at Alara. "Besides, I like my odds better with you alive than dead. Dead men don't buy supplies. Practical as always." "Damn right." Murphy lowered his voice. "Now listen, Marshall's getting antsy. Wants to ride out soon as the road's clear. I told him the drifts are still impassable. Might have also mentioned his horses threw shoes, might have also been the one who loosened those shoes in the first place." Silas blinked. "You sabotaged federal horses?" "I'm a blacksmith. Sometimes my work is sloppy." Murphy's expression didn't change. "Bought you another 2 weeks, maybe 3 if I drag my feet on the repairs." "That's a hanging offense. So's harboring fugitives. Seems like we're all taking risks these days." He handed Silas the rope. "Brought this in case things go sideways. Good for climbing, hauling, whatever. Strong enough to hold a man's weight." Silas took it. The hemp was rough against his palms. It smelled like tar and possibility. "Thank you," he said. Murphy nodded. "Don't thank me yet. When Clayton figures out I've been stalling, he'll come for me too, but..." He glanced out the window at the gray sky. "If I'm going to get arrested for something, might as well be for something that matters." Davy cleared his throat. "Uncle Murphy says you're one of the good ones." "I'm not." "He also says good men die stupid if they don't have help." Davy shifted his weight. "So if you need anything, messages carried, supplies hauled, you let us know." Silas looked at Murphy, then at the kid. 2 men risking their necks for him, for her. "Why?" he asked. Murphy shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired of watching scared men burn bridges because they're afraid of crossing them. Maybe I figure if we don't start trusting each other, white and Apache, we'll all freeze to death hating each other." He picked up his pack. "Or maybe I just like being contrary. Take your pick." They left the same way they came, quiet, quick, vanishing into the snow. Silas stood holding the rope. Alara came to stand beside him. "You have an ally," she said. "Maybe. More than maybe." She touched the rope. "In my language, this is called a lifeline. Murphy brought you one, literally." Silas looked at the coiled hemp in his hands. It was meant for climbing, for hauling supplies, for emergencies. But in 6 weeks, when the marshal came, it could also be used for hanging. He set it on the table, tried not to think about which purpose it would serve. Outside, the wind picked up again. The owl called once more. A warning or a promise? He couldn't tell. 6 weeks, Alara said softly. "My uncle will arrive in 6 weeks, perhaps sooner." "And when he does?" She looked at him. "Then we will see if Mercy can survive winter." The night came cold and clear. Stars like ice chips scattered across black velvet. Silas couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, feeding it wood, watching flames eat the darkness. Alara was supposed to be resting, but he heard her stirring on the bedroll Murphy had brought. "You are awake," she said. "Can't shut my brain off." She sat up, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. The firelight painted her face in gold and shadow. "What troubles you?" "Everything," he wanted to say. Instead, "Canyon Dell." She went still. "I need to tell you the truth," he continued. "The whole truth, not just the part where I saved you." "You do not owe me?" "Yes, I do." He poked the fire. Sparks drifted up like dying stars. You crossed a mountain in winter based on what you remember, but you were 7. You don't know what happened before I found you. Alara pulled the blanket tighter. Tell me. He took a breath. The smell of wood smoke filled his lungs, the same smell as that day 20 years ago. We rode in at dawn, 50 cavalry. Orders were clear: burn the village, confiscate supplies, arrest anyone who resisted. It was supposed to be a raid, not a massacre. His voice was flat, mechanical. But things got out of hand. Someone fired a shot, then everyone was firing, women screaming, children running, and the lieutenant, he gave the order to torch everything. The fire crackled. Outside, a coyote howled. I followed orders, Silas said. I set fires. I watched homes burn. I told myself it was war, that I was just a soldier doing his duty. He closed his eyes. Then I heard your mother. Alara's breath caught. She was trapped under a collapsed wagon, burning. She saw me standing there, and she didn't beg for herself. She screamed your name, over and over. Kaya, Kaya. He opened his eyes, looked at Alara. That was your name before, wasn't it? Before your people renamed you? Alara nodded slowly. Yes, Kaya, little bird. Your mama's last word was your name. I heard it. I carry it. His hands shook. I couldn't save her. The wagon was already burning too hot, but I could hear you crying somewhere close. So I looked. Found you under the supply cart, hiding. Your dress was smoking. Another minute and... He stopped. Couldn't finish. You carried me out, Alara said quietly. I did, but that doesn't erase what I did before. I helped burn your home. I followed orders that killed your people, your parents. His voice cracked. I'm not the hero you think I am. I'm the reason you needed saving in the first place. Silence settled heavy as snow. Alara stared into the fire. Her expression was unreadable. Say something, Silas whispered. She turned to him. Tears tracked down her face, reflecting firelight. My mother's name was Ayana, Eternal Blossom. Her voice was steady despite the tears. My father's name was Takota, friend to all. They were good people. They grew corn. They sang songs. They did not deserve to die in fire. No, they didn't. And you... She reached out, touched his face. Her palm was warm. You were a soldier following orders given by men who saw us as less than human. You were young. You were scared. And in that moment, when you heard my mother scream, you made a choice. You broke formation. You risked court-martial. You saved a child. It doesn't make up for... It does not erase, no. She wiped her eyes. But it matters. The choice matters. You could have walked away. You did not. Silas felt something break inside him. A dam holding back 20 years of guilt. I'm sorry, he choked out. God, I'm so sorry. Alara pulled him close. He buried his face against her shoulder and wept. For her parents, for the village, for the man he'd been and the man he'd failed to become. She held him. The fire crackled. The wind whispered against the cabin walls. Kind Eyes was born the day the soldier died, she said softly. That is who you are now. Not the man who followed orders, the man who broke them. They sat by the fire until the wood burned low. Alara's hand never left his shoulder. Finally, she spoke again. There is something else you must know. Silas looked up. Her face was grave. When I left my people, I did not simply walk away. I asked permission. She pulled up her sleeve, revealed her wrist. A marking there. 3 lines, freshly scarred. This is a blood debt summons. I sent it to my uncle before I left. His stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means he knows I came here. It means he knows who you are. She lowered her sleeve. My people have a law. When blood debt is invoked, the debtor must present themselves for judgment. If they do not, the debt is collected by force. Yes. She met his eyes. I forgive you, Silas Cordell. I forgave you the moment I recognized your face in the firelight. But forgiveness is mine to give. Justice... She paused. Justice belongs to my uncle, to my tribe. The fire was dying. Shadows crept closer. You're saying Red Cloud is coming either way? Yes. Even though you're here willingly? Yes. Even though you just told me I'm forgiven? Yes. Her voice was gentle but unyielding. Because this is not only about us. It is about Canyon Dell, about every Apache village burned by soldiers following orders, about justice that was never given. Silas stood, paced to the window. Outside, the moon was rising, full and cold. When? He asked. I told him I would return in 2 moons. If I do not, she touched the scars on her wrist. He will assume I was taken against my will, or killed, and he will come with warriors to balance the scales. 2 moons, February, Silas calculated. They were already into late December. That's 6 weeks. Yes, the same timeline Murphy had given. The marshal would arrive at the thaw. Red Cloud would arrive when the summons expired. He was caught between 2 forces, federal law from the east, tribal justice from the west, and winter was the only thing holding them back. So even if Murphy stalls Clayton, even if we make it through the legal trouble, my uncle will still come, with 50 warriors, maybe more. Silas laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. So I'm damned either way. Not damned. Alara stood, came to him. What's the difference? Red Cloud did not forbid me from coming. He gave me permission, but he also gave me a condition. She placed her hand over his heart. Prove to me, he said, that this white soldier deserves the mercy you wish to grant him. Prove that he is worthy of joining our family. Prove that the man with kind eyes still walks this earth. Silas stared at her. He's testing me through you. Yes. And if I fail, then the warriors who come will not be an honor guard. Her fingers curled into his shirt. They will be executioners. The wind picked up outside. The cabin groaned. What does he want? Silas asked. What do I have to do to pass this test? Ilara's dark eyes held his. I do not know. He did not tell me. He only said... She paused, searching for the words. He said, Winter will reveal what a man truly is. If he survives it with his honor intact, we will speak. If not... She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Silas looked out at the frozen landscape. Somewhere out there, Red Cloud was watching, waiting, counting the days until the summons expired. And beyond the mountains, Marshal Clayton was sharpening his rope, waiting for the roads to clear. 2 forces closing in, 6 weeks to prove himself worthy of mercy he wasn't sure he deserved. Alara, he said quietly, what if I can't do it? What if I'm not? She turned his face to hers. Then we will face it together, but you will not face it alone. Through the window, he saw movement, far off on the ridge. Just a shadow, but it looked like a man on horseback, watching. Then it was gone. He's already here, Silas whispered. Isn't he? Alara followed his gaze. My uncle does not wait for permission. He watches. He judges. And when the time comes, she stopped. Outside, a sound drifted through the cold, faint but unmistakable. War drums, distant, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the frozen dark. He is here, Alara confirmed, and he is waiting to see what kind of man you are. Dawn came gray and cold. The drums had stopped some time before sunrise, but their echo seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Silas woke to the smell of coffee, real coffee, from Murphy's supplies. Alara was already up, tending the fire, moving quiet as snow. You didn't sleep, he said. Neither did you. Fair point. He'd spent most of the night listening for hoofbeats, for war cries, for anything that meant Red Cloud's patience had run out. But nothing came. Just wind and silence and the occasional crack of ice shifting on the roof. He sat up, pulled on his boots. His knee ached. Old war wound that flared up in cold weather. He ignored it, stood, stretched. Alara handed him coffee in a tin cup. Their fingers touched. Hers were warm despite everything. We need to prepare, she said. For what? I can't fight 50 warriors. Can't outrun federal marshals. What the hell am I supposed to prepare for? Survival. She set down her own cup. If my uncle is watching, he is testing more than your courage. He is testing your resourcefulness, your ability to endure, your willingness to stand when others would run. Sounds like he's testing whether I'm too stupid to quit. Perhaps, a hint of a smile. But in my culture, stubbornness is a virtue. Silas almost laughed. Good, because I've got plenty of that. They spent the morning fortifying, stacked firewood by the door, enough to last 2 weeks if they rationed, checked in the cattle, made sure they had feed. Silas taught Alara how to shoot his Winchester, watching as she sighted down the barrel, squeezed the trigger. The crack echoed off the hills. She was a natural. Steady hands, good eye. Your people teach you to shoot? He asked. My uncle taught me. Said a woman should be able to defend herself. She worked the lever, ejected the spent shell. He also taught me to track, to hunt, to survive winters like this. Smart man. Careful, man. She handed back the rifle. He has lost too many to white soldiers. He will not lose me unless he is certain I am safe. Silas took the rifle, felt its familiar weight. And if he decides I'm not safe, then he will remove the threat. She met his eyes. Permanently. The wind kicked up. Snow devils danced across the yard. That evening, Alara built up the fire until it roared. She'd been quiet all afternoon, working on something with her hands. Silas hadn't asked. Now she stood holding a small bundle wrapped in red cloth. In my culture, she said, marriage does not require a preacher or papers. It requires witnesses, intention, and exchange. Silas's throat went dry. Witnesses? The fire, the land, the spirits of those who came before. She unwrapped the cloth. Inside, a white eagle feather, pristine, the quill wrapped in copper wire. This belonged to my mother. She wore it on her wedding day. He stared at it. Alara. My uncle knows I brought this. He knows what it means. She held it out. If you accept this, you accept me. You accept my people's ways, and you place yourself under my uncle's protection and his judgment. Protection and judgment. That's a hell of a combination. It is the way of things. We do not separate them. Silas looked at the feather. Moonlight caught the white barbs, made them glow like fresh snow. If I take this, he said slowly, I'm claiming you, in front of your uncle, in front of everyone. Yes. And if he doesn't approve, then we will face his disapproval together. She pressed the feather into his palm. The quill was cool, the copper wire warm from her hand. But if you do not take it, I will know you do not believe we can survive this, and I will leave. His fingers closed around the feather. You'd go back? I would have no choice. I cannot stay where I am not wanted. It's not about wanting. Then what is it about? Her voice was sharp. You think I do not know the risks? You think I crossed the bitter roots without counting the cost? She stepped closer. I am not a child anymore, Silas. I am a woman who knows her mind, and my mind is set. The only question is, are you brave enough to match me? The fire crackled. The smell of pine smoke and sage filled the small cabin. Silas looked at the feather in his hand, thought about what it meant, thought about Red Cloud watching from the darkness, weighing every choice. Then he thought about Alara's hand in his, the warmth of her beside him, the way she'd held him while he wept for sins 20 years old. I'm not brave, he said. I'm just tired of running. Then stop running. She took his free hand. Stand with me here, now. And he looked into her eyes, dark, fierce, unwavering. All right, he said. All right. She smiled then, and it transformed her face. She took the feather from his hand, wove it into his hair above his right ear. Her fingers were gentle, deliberate. In my people's way, she said softly, you are now marked as mine, and I as yours. Just like that? Just like that. She stepped back. When my uncle comes, he will see the feather, he will know you accepted my claim, and he will judge accordingly. Silas reached up, touched the feather. It was lighter than air, but felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What if he decides I'm not worthy? Then the feather will not save you. She took his hand again. But it will show him you are willing to try. And in my culture, that counts for something. They stood together by the fire, hand in hand, while outside the wind howled and somewhere in the darkness an old warrior watched and waited. Alara reached up, placed her palm against Silas's weathered cheek. We are married now, she said. In the eyes of my people, in the eyes of the spirits. No preacher, no paper, just this moment, just us. Silas covered her hand with his. Just us. She took the wooden bird from the mantel, the one she'd carried for 20 years, and set it back in its place of honor. When they come, she said, they will see this. They will see family, not fugitives. Through the window, the moon rose higher, and on the far ridge, barely visible, a figure on horseback turned and disappeared into the trees. Red Cloud had seen. Now the waiting truly began. It happened on a Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday. Silas had stopped tracking days. The drums started at dawn, slow, methodical, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Silas grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. Through the pale light, he saw them, 50 men, maybe more. On snowshoes, not horses, the snow was too deep for mounts. They moved in formation, silent except for the drums, war paint on faces, rifles wrapped in hide to keep powder dry, and at their head, an old man with a face carved from stone and eyes that had seen too much death. Red Cloud. "He's here," Silas said. Alara came to stand beside him. She'd already dressed in her finest buckskin, braided her hair with red cloth and white beads, war regalia. "He will not attack," she said. "Not yet. He comes to speak. With 50 armed men, he comes to be heard." The warriors formed a circle around the cabin, not close enough to threaten, but close enough that escape was impossible. They stood silent, rifles held loosely, faces impassive. Red Cloud dismounted from his snowshoes, walked forward alone. He stopped 20 paces from the door. "Silas Cordell," he called. His voice carried like wind over stone. "I would speak with you." Silas looked at Alara. She nodded. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp as knives. Red Cloud studied him, eyes sweeping from face to feet, lingering on the white eagle feather in his hair. Something flickered in the old man's expression, too quick to read. "You wear my sister's feather," Red Cloud said. "Your niece gave it to me." "I know. I gave her permission to bring it." He took a step closer. "Do you know what it means?" "That I'm claimed. That I accept her claim." "It means more than that." Red Cloud's gaze was sharp as flint. "It means you place yourself under the judgment of her family. Under my judgment. Do you understand this?" Silas's grip tightened on the rifle. "I do." "Good." Red Cloud glanced past him, saw Alara standing in the doorway. "Niece, you are well?" "I am well, uncle." "He has treated you with respect?" "He has." Red Cloud's eyes returned to Silas. 20 years ago, you carried her from fire. Canyon Dell. You remember this?" "Every day." "You also remember setting fires, following orders, watching my people burn." Silas's jaw tightened. "Yes." "And yet you saved one child, one life. Why?" The wind blew, snow swirled between them. "Because," Silas said slowly, "I heard her mother scream, and I realized orders don't make something right. They just make it legal." Red Cloud was silent for a long moment, then, "What was her mother's name?" "Ayana? Eternal Blossom?" The old man's expression shifted. Grief, old and deep. "You remember." "I remember all of them." Red Cloud stepped closer. Close enough Silas could see the old scars on his face, the gray in his braids, the weariness in his eyes. "I did not come for revenge," Red Cloud said quietly. "I came to see if the stories were true." Silas blinked. "Stories?" "Among my people, there is a legend. The soldier with kind eyes. A white man who broke formation to save an Apache child. Who defied his commanders. Who gave a crying girl a name and a wooden toy and carried her to safety." Red Cloud's gaze didn't waver. "My niece has told this story for 20 years. She made me promise that if she ever found you, I would not kill you on sight." The rifle felt heavy in Silas's hands. "That was her condition," Red Cloud continued. "She would seek you out. She would test your heart. And if you proved worthy, if you accepted her claim, wore the feather, stood by your word, then I would come not as an executioner, but as family." Silas's breath caught. This was planned. Not planned, hoped for. Red Cloud looked at Alara. "She believed in you when I did not. She said the man who saved her once would save her again, if given the chance." Alara stepped forward. "I did not lie to you, Silas. I told you I came to keep a vow. That was true. But I also—" She paused. "I gambled. I gambled that you would be the man I remembered, that you would accept me despite the danger, that you would stand when others would run." "And if I'd failed," Red Cloud answered, "then these warriors would have come as enemies. And you would not have lived to see spring." The drums had stopped. Silence settled like fresh snow. "So what now?" Silas asked. "Now," Red Cloud said, "you prove yourself worthy, not to me, to winter, to survival, to the land that does not lie." He gestured to the circle of warriors. "My men will watch. They will not help. They will not hinder, but they will witness. And when the thaw comes, when you have survived what few white men could, then we will speak of family, of adoption, of mercy that spans 2 worlds." "And if I don't survive?" Red Cloud's expression was unreadable. "Then my niece will mourn you, and she will return to our people knowing she tried." He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. There is one more thing you should know, Silas Cordell. What? The federal marshal is coming. In 6 weeks, perhaps less. When he arrives, he will find you surrounded by Apache warriors. Red Cloud's eyes glinted. This will complicate things. For him, for you, for all of us. You're saying I'm caught between two armies. I am saying, Red Cloud replied, that if you wish to survive, you must find a way to make peace with both, or die trying. He turned back to his warriors, spoke in Apache. The men nodded, began setting up camp, far enough to give privacy, close enough to watch. Alara came to Silas's side. He gave his blessing, she said softly. The test is real, but he wants you to pass. Silas looked at the eagle feather in his hand, then at the warriors making camp, then at the woman beside him. Your uncle, he said, has a hell of a way of showing approval. He is Apache. We do not make things easy. She took his hand. But we are loyal to those who earn it. Through the trees, Silas saw Red Cloud watching them. The old man raised one hand, not a wave, not a salute, just acknowledgement. Then he turned away. 6 weeks, Silas muttered. 6 weeks to prove I'm not a coward, not a traitor, and worthy of joining a tribe whose village I helped burn. Yes. That's impossible. Perhaps, Alara squeezed his hand. But impossible is what we do best. The drum started again, slower this time, steady as a heartbeat, a rhythm to survive by. 2 weeks passed. The warriors stayed in their camp, visible but distant. Smoke from their fires rose like gray prayers against white sky. Silas felt their eyes constantly, watching him chop wood, watching him tend cattle, watching him and Alara move around each other in the careful dance of two people learning to share space. The pressure built like ice on a roof, silent, heavy, waiting to crack. It cracked on a Thursday. Silas was splitting wood when he heard shouting, young voice high with panic. He dropped the axe, grabbed his rifle, ran toward the sound. At the creek, the one that ran between his property and Red Cloud's camp, a boy was in trouble. The ice had broken. He'd fallen through, was thrashing in water so cold it could stop a heart in minutes. His head kept going under, coming up, going under. Silas ran harder. He reached the bank, saw Red Cloud standing on the opposite side. Just standing, watching his— no, not his. The boy's features were too familiar. Alara's brother. Help him, Silas shouted. Red Cloud didn't move. This is not my test to pass. Silas stared. He's a child. He is 12 winters, old enough to know the ice, old enough to face consequences. Red Cloud's face was stone. And you are being tested. Will you risk your life for an Apache child? Again? Or have 20 years made you wise enough to save yourself? The boy's head went under, didn't come up. Jesus Christ, Silas breathed. He looked at the ice, thin, cracking, spreading spiderweb fractures with every second. Looked at Alara running toward them, her face white with terror. Looked at Red Cloud, still motionless. This was the test, the real one. Save himself and fail. Save the boy and maybe die. 20 years ago, he'd made this choice. In fire. Now winter was asking him to make it again in ice. Silas dropped the rifle. Silas, no! Alara reached for him. He shook her off, grabbed Murphy's rope from his belt. He'd been carrying it everywhere since the trader brought it. Tied one end around his waist, threw the other to Alara. Hold this. Don't let go. The ice won't hold. I know. He stepped onto the creek. The ice groaned, cracked, held. He took another step, another. The boy surfaced, gasping, eyes rolling, going into shock. Silas moved faster. The ice splintered beneath his boots. Freezing water soaked through, bit his feet like teeth. 10 feet from the boy. 5. The ice gave way. Silas plunged into water so cold it stopped his breath. His lungs seized. His vision went white. But his hands found the boy's arm. Grabbed. Held. He kicked. Pulled them both toward the surface. His head broke through. He gasped. Tasted blood. Had bitten his tongue. Pull! He shouted to Alara. She pulled. The rope went taut. Silas hooked his arm around the boy, held tight as they were dragged through broken ice and freezing water toward the bank. His legs stopped working, couldn't feel them, couldn't feel anything except the boy's weight and the rope cutting into his ribs. Hands grabbed him. Warriors, they'd run down from camp, pulled him and the boy onto solid ground. Someone wrapped a blanket around the child, someone else around Silas. But Silas couldn't stop shaking. His teeth chattered so hard he thought they'd break. His vision blurred. He looked up. Red Cloud was standing over him. You are a fool, the old man said. Yeah. Silas's voice was barely a rasp. But the boy's breathing. Red Cloud's expression shifted, something that might have been respect. He is breathing, Red Cloud agreed. Because you did not hesitate. Because when the moment came, you chose mercy over safety. Again, he knelt. 20 years ago, you saved my sister's daughter from fire. Today, you saved her brother from ice. This is not coincidence. This is character. They carried Silas back to the cabin. Alara stripped his frozen clothes, wrapped him in blankets by the fire. His skin had gone gray, his fingers blue. You could have died, she said, her voice shaking. Kid was drowning. My uncle would have saved him, eventually. Eventually ain't good enough. Silas's teeth still chattered. Couldn't just stand there. I know. She pressed a hot cup into his hands, forced him to drink. That is why you passed. The door opened. Red Cloud entered carrying the boy. The child was wrapped in furs, his lips still blue, but breathing steady. He looked at Silas with wide, dark eyes. Thank you, the boy whispered in English. Silas nodded, couldn't speak. Red Cloud set the boy near the fire, gestured to Alara. They spoke in Apache. Quick, low. She nodded. Then Red Cloud turned to Silas. My nephew wishes to give you something. The boy reached into his furs, pulled out a small carved bird, fresh wood, unpainted. The shape was rough but recognizable. I made this, the boy said. Before the ice, I wanted... He paused, searching for words. My sister told me stories. About the soldier who saved her. She said he carved birds, so I learned. To be like him. Silas took the bird. His hands were still shaking, but he held it steady. What's your name, son? The boy looked at Red Cloud. The old man nodded. In Apache, I am called Dakea. In English, the boy's chin lifted with pride. My sister named me after you, after the man in her stories. She calls me Kind Eyes. Silas's breath caught. 20 years. 20 years he'd carried the weight of Canyon Dell, thinking he'd saved one life and destroyed hundreds. But here was proof, living, breathing proof, that one act of mercy had echoed forward. Alara had survived, had grown, had told stories, had named her brother after a white soldier who broke orders to save an Apache child. And now that brother had tried to carve birds to honor a man he'd never met, until today. Kind Eyes, Silas repeated. His voice was rough. That's a good name. The boy smiled. My sister says you gave it to her first. Now I carry it. And when I have children, maybe they will carry it too. Red Cloud placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. Mercy, he said, looking at Silas, does not end with one act. It grows. It spreads, like ripples in water. He paused. Or like fire that warms instead of burns. Silas looked at the carved bird in his palm, looked at the boy, Kind Eyes, who'd almost died, looked at Alara, her face wet with tears. You passed the test, Red Cloud said. You proved that the soldier with kind eyes still exists, that 20 years did not turn you into stone. He pulled something from his coat, a white eagle feather, twin to the one Alara had given Silas. This belonged to my sister, Ayana, the boy's grandmother, the woman who died screaming her daughter's name. He placed it in Silas's free hand. She would have wanted you to have it, because you heard her, you answered, and you have spent 20 years trying to atone. Red Cloud's voice was quiet. You do not need to atone anymore, Silas Cordell. You are forgiven, by me, by my people, by the spirits of those who died at Canyon Dell. Silas couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Red Cloud straightened. Tomorrow we will hold a ceremony. You will be adopted into our tribe as family, as kin, as one of us. He looked at Alara. And your marriage to my niece will be recognized by our people and by the spirits. But the marshal, Silas started. The marshal is coming, we know. Red Cloud's eyes glinted. And when he arrives, he will find that you are under the protection of the Apache Nation, that you are family, that any threat to you is a threat to us. He moved to the door. Paused. Let him come. We will be ready. He left. The boy, Kind Eyes, touched Silas's arm. Thank you, he said again, for saving me, for saving my sister, for being the man in the stories. Then he followed his uncle into the cold. Alara collapsed beside Silas, buried her face in his shoulder. You almost died, she whispered. But I didn't, and the boy's alive. My uncle would have let you drown, if you had hesitated. If you had chosen yourself over my brother— I know. Silas wrapped his arm around her. But I didn't hesitate. And I won't. Not anymore. Outside, the drums started again. But different now. Not war drums, celebration drums. The test was over. Tomorrow he would be adopted, would become Apache in the eyes of the tribe. And in 6 days, Marshal Clayton would arrive to arrest a man who no longer existed. Silas looked at the 2 feathers in his hand, one from Alara's mother, one from her grandmother. Both women who'd died at Canyon Dell. Both women whose legacy lived on in the family that had just claimed him. Thank you, he whispered to the feathers, to the spirits, to the weight of 20 years finally lifting. Alara held him tighter, and the fire burned warm. The ceremony happened at dawn, 3 days later. Red Cloud chose the frozen creek as the site, the same place Silas had nearly died, the same place he'd proven himself. 50 warriors formed a circle. In the center, a fire, built on packed snow, flames dancing despite the cold. Silas stood beside Alara. She'd dressed him in traditional clothing, buckskin shirt, beaded vest, moccasins. The eagle feathers were woven into his hair. He felt ridiculous, like a child playing dress-up. But when Red Cloud stepped forward, painted and solemn, Silas understood this was no game. We gathered to witness adoption, Red Cloud said in English, for Silas's benefit, to welcome a stranger into our family, to make him kin. The warriors began to sing, low, rhythmic, ancient. The sound raised the hair on Silas's arms. Red Cloud took Silas's hand, cut his palm with a knife, did the same to his own, pressed them together. Blood of my blood, Red Cloud said. Brother of my heart, you saved my sister's child from fire. You saved her son from ice. You have proven yourself worthy. Now I claim you as family. He released Silas's hand, placed a 3rd eagle feather in his hair. You are Apache now, one of us, protected by our laws, bound by our ways. Red Cloud's voice carried across the frozen creek. Your enemies are our enemies. Your family is our family. From this moment forward, you are Silas Kindeyes of the Chiricahua Apache. The warriors raised their rifles, fired into the air. The sound cracked like thunder. Alara stepped forward, placed her hand over Silas's heart. And I claim him as husband, she said. By the laws of our people, by the witness of fire and blood, by the blessing of my uncle. Red Cloud nodded. It is done. The singing rose. Warriors came forward, clasped Silas's arm, welcomed him. Faces that had been hard and suspicious now showed respect. Kind Eyes, the boy, pushed through the crowd, hugged Silas hard. Brother, he said, you are my brother now. Silas's throat was too tight to answer. He just held the boy, this child who'd been named after a legend and almost died, proving it was real. The ceremony continued. Food was shared, stories told, laughter rose despite the cold. For the first time in 20 years, Silas felt like he belonged somewhere. Then he heard it. Hoofbeats, multiple. Coming fast from the east, the singing stopped. Red Cloud turned, hand moving to his rifle. Through the trees, riders appeared. 8 men, federal badges glinting on their coats. At their head, Marshal Clayton Beckett. The marshal reined in his horse 50 paces away. His eyes swept the scene. 50 armed warriors, Silas in Apache clothing, the ceremonial fire still burning. Silas Cordell, Clayton called. I have a warrant for your arrest. Step forward. Nobody moved. Red Cloud walked to stand beside Silas. This man is under the protection of the Apache Nation. You have no authority here. Federal law supersedes tribal. Not in winter. Red Cloud's voice was iron. There is an old agreement, a treaty written before you were born, Marshal. It states that during the harshest season, when travel is deadly and survival uncertain, all blood debts and legal disputes are suspended. This is called winter sanctuary. Clayton's jaw tightened. I don't know anything about— Ignorance of law is no excuse. Red Cloud gestured to Silas. This man has been adopted into our tribe. He is Apache now. He is family. If you take him from us. And that— he raised his voice. That means war. The warriors shifted. 50 rifles, suddenly very present. Clayton's deputies looked nervous. One muttered something. Another's hand drifted toward his gun. Stand down, Clayton ordered his men. To Red Cloud, or you're threatening federal officers. I am stating facts. Red Cloud's expression didn't change. You came for a criminal, but the man you seek no longer exists. Silas Cordell died on that ice 3 days ago. The man who stands here now is Silas Kindeyes. He is Apache. He is family. And if you insist on taking him, the warriors raised their rifles, not aiming, just ready. You will have to go through all of us. Silence. The only sound was wind through pines and horses stamping. Clayton stared at Silas. You really going to hide behind them? I'm not hiding. Silas stepped forward. I'm standing. There's a difference. You're a traitor. I'm a man who saved a child 20 years ago and spent 2 decades trying to atone for the sins that came before it. Silas met Clayton's eyes. I followed orders at Canyon Dell, burned homes, watched people die. Then I broke those orders to save one life, one Apache girl. And you know what I learned, Marshal? What? That mercy matters more than law. That doing right sometimes means breaking rules. And that family, real family, isn't about blood or borders. It's about who stands with you when everything else falls apart. Clayton's horse shifted. The marshal's hand was on his pistol, but he hadn't drawn. I can't just ride away, he said finally. I have orders. Then write a new report. Alara's voice cut through the tension. She stepped forward, stood beside Silas. Tell your superiors the fugitive is under protective custody. Tell them he has been adopted by the Apache Nation and removing him would violate treaty law and risk open conflict. That's not... It is true, Red Cloud interrupted. Winter Sanctuary is real. It is in the treaties your government signed. If you choose to ignore it, the consequences fall on you. Clayton looked at his deputies, looked at the warriors, looked at Silas and Alara standing together, hands clasped. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and he knew it. Protective custody, he said finally. His voice was tight. That's what I'll report. But if I hear even a whisper that you're causing trouble... You won't, Silas said. Clayton held his gaze for a long moment. Then he turned his horse. Let's go, he told his men. They rode away slowly, rifles still holstered. The deputies kept looking back, nervous. When they disappeared into the trees, the warriors lowered their weapons. Red Cloud turned to Silas. He will be back. Next year, the year after. Federal law does not forget. I know. But for now, Red Cloud smiled, rare and fierce. For now, you are safe. You are family, and that is enough. The warriors began to sing again. Celebration, not war. Kind Eyes ran up to Silas, pressed something into his hand. Another carved bird, fresh, unpainted. For the marshal, the boy said. So he remembers. Mercy can fly farther than bullets. Silas looked at the small wooden bird, looked at the boy who'd carved it, the second Kind Eyes, named after a legend that was somehow real. Take it to him, Red Cloud said, tomorrow, as a gift, as proof that we seek peace, not war. Silas nodded. He would. He'd ride to town, find Clayton, give him the bird carved by an Apache boy who'd almost drowned and been saved by a white man who'd once burned villages. Full circle, mercy echoing forward. 20 years and a carved bird and a child who refused to let hate be the final word. Alara squeezed his hand. Come, the food is getting cold. They returned to the fire. The warriors welcomed them with warm stew and laughter and stories that would be told for generations. And somewhere in the trees, watching them go, Marshal Clayton Beckett sat on his horse and wondered when the world had gotten so complicated. He'd come to arrest a traitor. Instead, he'd found a family. He turned his horse east and rode toward town, already drafting the report in his head. Subject located, under protective custody of Apache Nation, Winter Sanctuary invoked, recommend no further action at this time. It wasn't the truth, but it was true enough, and sometimes that was all a man could offer. Murphy came back in March when the first thaw started. He trudged up to the cabin, pack on his back, grinning through his frost-scarred beard. Heard you got yourself adopted, he called. Silas opened the door. News travels fast. When 50 Apache warriors show up to an adoption ceremony, people notice. Murphy stomped inside, shook off melting snow. Also heard you made Clayton look like a fool. That true? He had 8 guns. Red Cloud had 50. Math worked itself out. Murphy laughed. Bet that's stuck in his craw. He'll survive. Silas poured coffee. We gave him a carved bird as a peace offering. Kid's idea. Kind Eyes? The younger one, yeah. Murphy accepted the cup, nodded to Alara. She was grinding corn, working steady. Her feet had healed, though she still limped slightly on cold mornings. Ma'am, you look well? I am well, Murphy, thank you. Brought you a gift. Murphy pulled out a bundle, cloth, sugar, real coffee, and a small leather-bound book. Wedding present, late but heartfelt. Alara took the book, opened it, blank pages. For writing? For recording, stories, recipes, whatever you want. Murphy's expression was soft. Figure you two got a story worth writing down. Might as well preserve it. Silas felt his throat tighten. Thank you. Don't mention it. Murphy cleared his throat, uncomfortable with sentiment. Also, I'm supposed to tell you, Clayton filed his report. Federal government accepted it. You're officially under protective custody of the Apache Nation. Means they can't touch you without starting a war nobody wants. So I'm safe. Safe as anyone gets in this country. Murphy took a long drink of coffee. Town's still talking, though. Some folks think you're a hero. Others think you're a traitor. Most just think you're crazy for marrying an Apache woman in the middle of winter. Maybe I am, Alara smiled. He is, but he is my kind of crazy. Murphy raised his cup. To crazy, then, and to surviving winter, which, by the way, you did. Most folks didn't think you would. Most folks underestimate stubbornness. Amen to that. Murphy set down his cup. I should go. Got deliveries. But, he looked at Silas. You did good, old friend. Real good. Your brother would have been proud. He left before Silas could respond. Alara came to stand beside him, watched Murphy disappear into the trees. He is a good man, she said. He is. We have many good men, your friend, my uncle, even the marshal, in his way. Clayton? He could have ignored Winter Sanctuary, could have tried to take you by force. She turned to him. But he chose peace. That takes strength. Silas thought about that, about Clayton riding away, about the carved bird Murphy said the marshal had kept, placed it on his desk, reportedly, where everyone could see it. A reminder, or maybe a promise. Spring's coming, Silas said. Yes. Things'll change. They already have. She took his hand, but we will change with them, together. 3 months later, on a warm April morning, Silas stood in his yard and watched the world wake up. The snow was gone, grass pushing through mud, creek running full and loud, birds singing, actual birds, not just crows and ravens. Spring. He'd survived. They'd survived. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Alara stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd planted seeds last week, corn, beans, squash. Traditional crops, she'd said, for a traditional family. They sat on the porch steps. The wood was warm under the sun. Kind Eyes is coming today, Alara said. My brother, he wants to learn more carving. I'll teach him. He also wants to learn English. Says if we're going to live between 2 worlds, he should speak both languages. Smart kid. He learned from watching you. She leaned against him. You know what my uncle said yesterday? What? He said you're the best mistake he ever made. Silas snorted. A mistake? He did not expect to like you, did not expect to welcome you, but, she smiled. He says sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. Through the trees, Silas saw movement, Kind Eyes running up the path, another carved bird in his hands. The boy was getting better. His birds actually looked like birds now. Behind him, walking slower, came Red Cloud. The old man raised his hand in greeting. Silas waved back. Family. This was family, not the one he'd been born into, not the one he'd expected, but the one he'd earned through fire and ice and 20 years of carrying guilt he'd finally been allowed to set down. Kind Eyes reached the porch, held up his carving. Look, I made a hawk this time. For my sister, for Firehawk. Alara took it, studied it. It's beautiful. Uncle Red Cloud says, hawks are messengers. They carry prayers between earth and sky. The boy looked at Silas. Is that true? In Apache belief, yes. What about in your belief? Silas thought about that, about prayers and messages and mercy that traveled 20 years to land on his doorstep in the middle of a blizzard. Yeah, he said, I think that's true. Red Cloud reached the porch, settled himself on the steps with a groan. My bones are old. Spring cannot come fast enough. You say that every year, Alara teased, because it is true every year. He accepted the coffee Silas offered. Murphy sent word. The marshal's retiring, moving east, too old for frontier work, he says. He's younger than you. Yes, but he is soft. Red Cloud's eyes twinkled. We are made of tougher material. They sat in comfortable silence, sun warm, coffee hot, the smell of pine and wet earth and new growth. Kind Eyes started carving a new bird, this one with wings spread like it was flying. "What's this one for?" Silas asked. "For you, for Kind Eyes the first." The boy didn't look up from his work. "So you remember, you saved two of us, me and my sister. And maybe—" He paused, focused on getting the wing shape right. "Maybe someday I'll save someone too, and they'll carve birds, and it will keep going, forever." Silas's chest tightened. Forever. Mercy echoing forward through generations, through carved birds and stories told by firelight and children named after legends that somehow came true. Alara took his hand. "The cold did not kill you." "No. It just made room for something warmer." He looked at her, at Kind Eyes carving, at Red Cloud watching the horizon, at the cabin that had been a prison of silence and was now a home filled with laughter. "Yeah," he said, "it did." The birds sang, the creek flowed, and somewhere in the warm spring air, Silas could have sworn he heard drums, not war drums, but celebration drums. The sound of a family, forged in fire and ice, learning to live in the space between two worlds, learning to thrive. Now, I've lived long enough to know a few things about cold. It'll test you, strip you down to what you're really made of. That winter of '87 tested Silas Cordell harder than any he'd seen before. But here's the thing about winter, it doesn't just take. Sometimes, if you're fool enough to keep the fire burning, it gives back. Silas and Alara didn't have much, just a creaky cabin, 3 half-starved cattle, and a vow 20 years in the making, but they had each other. And when the snow finally melted, they were still standing. Not because they were stronger than the cold, but because they refused to let it win alone. Red Cloud came back that summer with a gift. 2 horses, bred from his finest stock, said they were for his nephew by choice and his niece by blood. Marshall Clayton never filed new charges. Word is he kept that carved bird on his desk until the day he died. Murphy lived another 15 years, long enough to stand witness at 3 more weddings on that same porch, children of the first Kind Eyes, grown and starting families of their own. Each time, he'd raise his glass and mutter, "Damnedest thing I ever saw, love in a blizzard." As for the boy they called Kind Eyes, Alara's brother, he grew up riding between 2 worlds, built a trading post where white settlers and Apache could meet without rifles. Used to tell folks, "My uncle saved a white man's soul. That man saved my life. Seems to me we're even." Silas died at 73, surrounded by grandchildren who spoke 2 languages and answered to names like Samuel Firehawk and Mary Kind Eyes. When they buried him, both tribes came. Red Cloud, older than the hills by then, placed that white eagle feather on the coffin. Said, "This man taught us something we'd forgotten. Mercy is braver than war." Alara outlived them all, ran that ranch another 20 years, teaching young ones, Apache and white, how to survive winter, not by fighting it, but by sharing the fire. I reckon that's the lesson. The cold's gonna come, always does. But if you're lucky, if you're fool enough to open your door when you hear hoofbeats in a blizzard, you might just find the one thing winter can't freeze. A vow kept, a life saved, a family forged in ice and fire. Spring always comes, but only for those who survive together